of the most famous sex tape in history was never meant to be seen by anyone. Just like that, Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee had their private life turned into the world's first viral internet scandal. But who really betrayed them? The guy who stole the tape or the industry that cashed in? Today, we're sitting down with Rob Siegel, the showrunner of Hulu's Pam and Tommy series. We're talking what a showrunner actually does, how a writer's room runs, and how to break into Hollywood as a screenwriter. If you like content like this, stick around, hit that subscribe button. Now let's get to the episode.
Hello, Rob. Welcome to the Hotsheet. I was thinking about your film. You're the screenwriter for Pam and Tommy, the first viral video of the internet age. It's like this amazing premise. But how did this begin? Was this your idea or did somebody come to you? Like, you're a screenwriter, so how does that work? Like, how do these projects come together?
Well, they can come together in general. They can come together in many, many ways. They can originate with the writer, or people can bring things to the writer. In this case, it was brought to me by a producer named Dylan Sellers, and then another producer named Sue Nagel, who was with a company called Annapurna. And they had optioned a Rolling Stone article because Hollywood loves IP. There was a Rolling Stone article called something like the wild, untold story of the world's biggest tape theft or something.
Yeah,
Just
I
the
have it right
whole,
here. Pam and Tommy.
Go for it, Sam.
Pam and Tommy's untold story of the world's most famous sex tape. Boom.
okay,
Infamous.
that's
Best.
much better.
Infamous.
Yes, most infamous sex tape. I butchered that. Good. So yeah, they
So did I.
they came to me with that article, which they had optioned, and they thought it would make a great limited series TV show. And I couldn't disagree with them. I read the article. It was maybe 8 pages, kind of a long piece in Rolling Stone. And it just read like a hit limited series TV show. And
Total no-brainer. It was a no-brainer, right?
for me,
Like, amazing.
well, it's challenging material, but for me, it checked all the boxes of kind of what turns me on as a writer, because it was, broadly speaking, it was really just clearly very fun. It had just all this sex, drugs, rock and roll to it. All these famous, beautiful people, and you had the 90s nostalgia. You had all this fun to it, but then you also had this like real substance underneath it. And that's kind of, for me, the magic formula is, you know, is this entertaining, and is there an opportunity to, say things? So I immediately signed on, and then forgetting the sequence, but it was brought to Seth Rogen's company, Point Grey, and they're really big, active producers in Hollywood. Seth is one of the best producers in town of actors. And it originally was intended to star James Franco, and they brought it to me to write. And, I said yes, and we were kind of off and running. Then we started pitching the concept to, we made the rounds to Hulu and Netflix and all kind of the usual suspects. And Hulu was just kind of jumped on it really hard, and it felt like they were the right home for it. So that was where we did it.
And you guys were nominated for 10 Emmy nominations, which is unbelievable. It's such a great series. And Sean, didn't you just
Thank you.
rewatch it?
I did rewatch it, and I think Lily James kills it. She does a phenomenal job in this, and
Yeah, she's
everybody
unbelievable.
did.
And
Yeah.
Sebastian is just incredible. He's such a chameleon. I would work with either of them again in a heartbeat.
Yeah, the whole thing was just so well done. Everybody on the planet's probably seen the sex tape. I remember reading that Rolling Stone article, like, growing up in the 90s, like this was the big story. So we all knew about the story. But what you accomplished was bring a fresh perspective to this story. And it was really, obviously a love letter to Pam, understanding like her role in the story and how much this affected her and her relationship. And I really felt like you brought her character and her perspective to life and gave me great empathy for her. And I thought that was amazing. And I love to how you developed that character and that story.
I mean, the guiding thing all along was just to really do right by her and really tell her side of the story that really had never been told before. What I love about it is it starts as this love story, really just this love story between these two people, and then it transforms into something much bigger. And we see how this like massive invasion of privacy really like shaped the media and the celebrity culture that we have today. And then, like you said, we also see the strength that it took for Pam to battle the sexism and the misogyny that she faced after the tape went public. So to me, it's like a really, again, getting back to like what drew me to it. It's a really essential story that asks us to examine our role in, I would say, perpetuating an unhealthy internet culture, if that makes sense. And then I also just love that it was beyond that. It's this opportunity to really explore like so many other things, like these really big subjects like the media, the nature of celebrity, female objectification, and exploitation, toxic masculinity, of course, courtesy of Tommy most of the time, invasion of privacy. It's also really a story about the dawn of the internet. This was really the first viral video.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and it's a viral video that
Incredible.
it took about 2 years for this video to actually go viral because at the time no one knew, if this video had come out today, it would be around the world in 10 seconds. But back then, the infrastructure was not in place. They didn't have, broadband video. So the way they went about trying to make this thing go viral was like very clumsy and in a way that to us today is like kind of um, almost comical. It also deals with the justice system, obviously. As far as Pam goes, I don't want to speak for her or Tommy, but I will say to your point that we really wanted to tell the story beyond just what was in the headlines at the time. There was like really no playbook for what they went through, particularly Pam, and our hope was really just that um, by shining a light on, not to be corny, but like her inner strength, that we could create empathy for her, and really the kind of empathy that didn't exist at the time when all this was going on. Um, I love we all love so many things about Pam. For one, we love that we meaning the people, myself and the other writers and producers, we love the fact that this didn't define her. She's like an incredibly strong and resilient person, and the way that she was treated at this time was just so different than the way Tommy was treated.
Oh, I
He was
remember. It was
hailed,
terrible. Yeah.
he was like hailed as this hero, and what everyone was talking about was like how big his dick was. And he kind of like when this tape came out, he kind of got this giant collective high five from the planet, and meanwhile
Yep.
Pam really was like slut shamed for it.
Yeah.
It was such a different era, and
It
you
was so
know,
unfair.
it- but yeah, it had to suck, but she battled through it and really came out much stronger in the end. Um, if you know anything about her backstory, she's been through a lot of like really terrible shit. Um, in her life. She was abused when she was young. She really didn't have it easy. Everyone thinks of her as just a sort of like blonde bombshell that's been kind of blissfully sailing through life, but she really had it hard. But she like never lets the bad stuff be what defines her, including like just if you look at her today, and she always somehow manages to like whatever obstacle is put in front of her, she gets knocked down, then she somehow comes out like in a better place, in a stronger place than when she started, and even now there's been this like amazing Pam renaissance in the world, like in the time since the show came out, First, there was a documentary about her. She starred in Chicago on Broadway. She was in this amazing critically acclaimed movie called The Last Showgirl, where she was getting like Oscar buzz. On and on. And she's just like so incredibly tough and smart and shrewd. And people have always kind of underestimated her because of that really bubbly exterior, which is, I'm sure, part of her armor, and it's a protective thing. But I think because of it, the downside of it is like people really underestimate her a lot of the time. And one of the things we tried to do in making this show is just to really show that to really shine a light on all these incredible positive qualities she has, and also just show that there's like a lot more to her than that kind of public image of the ditzy blonde.
Well, that's what I loved about it, because as a blonde, like a real blonde, growing up, like the blonde stereotype, I've gotten that, like, oh, you're just some silly blonde because you smile and laugh a lot, You're like, you're never two steps away from that. And she is kind of the ultimate blonde. I've always loved her. She did have this like typecast of being this blonde bimbo and this sex icon and stuff, but she's totally surpassed that and, shown that she's resilient and now basically just an icon.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it's been fun to watch her evolve over the years and
she's
now kind of
funny. Oh,
embrace.
she was in Naked Gun. I
She's
forgot about that. She's so good.
yeah.
It's unbelievable, man. She's starring in all like these cool now. I feel like I keep picking up not picking up the paper, but reading like Variety and Deadline, and you'll see that she was just cast in some like cool A24 movie. She's really like having a moment
It's
right now, and
great.
it's yeah. And she's been on the
Well,
red
she's real.
carpet.
You believe her because she's been through a lot and she's
Mhm.
real, I think she comes off as, I hate overusing the word, like authentic.
For you preparing this and writing this, her and Tommy, they weren't part of this movie, right? I mean, so when they're not part of this, how do you prepare for this? Like as a writer, what's your process and research, and how do you
Well,
do that?
we reached out to both of them because we did want their involvement. They weren't interested in being involved, and we respected that. Um, so we really just, it's the same as any other project where you're dealing with real people. You just try to learn as much as you possibly can about them, get all the source materials you can. In this case, it was reading a lot of articles, watching a lot of interviews, listening to, any old footage we could get. Unfortunately, in this case, there's a lot of it. There was a ton of, obviously, this was a major kind of news event at the time. So there was a lot of things that we could draw upon. And then you just try to get into their heads and, try to, I mean, it really helped that we were very clear from the start. Our point of view was very sympathetic and very, like, if there was a hero of the story, it was Pam. We weren't out to demonize anyone. Tommy definitely has his faults, and we tried not to, we tried to be honest about that. But, even Tommy has his charms, and even to this day, Pam speaks fondly of him. But really, she was the hero of our story. And the goal was just, as long as we knew that we were on her side, our point of view was we're on her side, and we're trying to kind of, among a lot of other things, really set the record straight that, this tape, I think a lot of people probably came into our show knowing that there was a sex tape, but not really knowing the true story behind it, probably cynically assumed that they were the ones that released the tape, which was absolutely not the case. That, this was a violation. It was stolen from them. This guy, Rand Gautier, who is played by Seth Rogen, was this like disgruntled electrician who had done work on their house. Tommy stiffed him for a few $1,000, and he was pissed off. This is all in the show, but so I'm not really giving anything away. This like disgruntled electrician was pissed at them, and as this sort of petty act of revenge, stole their safe, stole Tommy's safe, thinking, maybe he'll find some money in it or some jewelry. And he did, but he also found this unmarked VHS cassette. And when he popped it in his VHS player, he said, "Holy shit!" And then he immediately saw dollar signs. So really, just this was nothing that they asked for, nothing that they wanted. I think, like I said, a lot of people, I think, assumed cynically that Pam and Tommy must have been involved in this because in the years that followed, because of this tape becoming such a sensation, there were sex tapes that were like kind of deliberately leaked. You hear about um, Kim Kardashian's tape and Paris. I mean, after after this whole scandal happened, it kind of became a career move. Hey, let's make a sex tape, and then we'll accidentally, quote unquote, accidentally leak it. I hope I don't get sued because I'm pretty sure Kim Kardashian and Paris tapes. Maybe it's not officially known. I don't think it's ever been proven, but the consensus seems to be that most people seem to think that they like released them allegedly. So I think
Allegedly.
now, because of everything that followed, where like invasions of privacy are done, their self-inflicted wounds and their career moves, and now we're living in this age where there's nothing, that line between one's private and public life is erased almost entirely. Celebrities, in this social media age we live in with TikTok and Instagram, we're invited into the homes and the bedrooms and the intimate spaces of celebrities, but like it's so common now that you forget that like in the 90s, up until the 90s, celebrities were just they were so much more inaccessible, and they were such a mystery. I mean, forget about just being able to see a celebrity having sex. Like you never saw their house, you never like ever, you didn't know where they lived, so just even that aspect of this tape, like the intimacy of seeing them on a boat and seeing the behind the scenes,
Yeah.
scenesness of it all was so
Yeah.
like mind blowing. If I don't know if you remember at the time, but like that you had
Oh,
access to
yeah.
this, like, oh, that's what their bed looks like. That's what's hanging on their wall behind them. All of that was,
Yeah.
you'd never
Yeah.
ever knew anything about a
Yeah.
celebrity except when they step out in public.
And that's where Cribs took us, right? That's why Cribs was such a big hit,
Cribs was
right?
right. I
Right.
think Cribs was
Yeah.
right
That
around
was
the same
huge.
time. It was like, oh my
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
I'm gonna see what the living room looks like, and oh, so and so has a pool table.
Yeah.
It was like wild and mind blowing. So this tape was
Yeah.
really like in that, it was kind of right in that kind of time period. So
And
yeah,
they
I
were on
mean,
vacation, right? It was their vacation video or at
yeah,
home
they were.
doing.
Well, it was recorded over a period of time, but like kind of the big, most famous section of the tape was when they were on Lake Mead on a boat. Like the
Yeah.
Yeah.
boat
Lake Mead.
part,
Yeah.
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 yeah. There was a lot of like them having sex on a boat, and it's all very like if you watch it, it's like kind of strangely sweet and innocent, and they're like two puppy dogs in love. It doesn't feel like they're performing for the camera or where,
No.
which again makes it that much more like intimate feeling, and that much more like you're peeking behind a curtain that you're not like normally ever supposed to see behind. So it was really, yeah, for the time it was just so like from outer space that we forget how from outer space it was to see that from a celebrity.
Yeah. It really was. It was. I remember that time, and I'll admit I saw part of the tape, and
It's
and
okay.
It's okay. 77. Wait,
yeah.
no. They earned 77 million, but there's probably more than 77 million people who've seen the tape,
Yeah.
Sean. So
They
it's
Yeah.
all
they
good.
never made any. They didn't make any money off the tape. The guy who the internet
Yeah.
sort of the porn pioneer. Seth Warshawski is the guy who really made the money off the tape. Even Rand, who stole the tape, the guy Seth Rogen plays, just couldn't figure out how to make money off the tape. He was selling them. If it happened today, you would throw it up online and put it behind a paywall and charge people per view, but they didn't have that technology then. So he just put up basically an ad, like a PO box ad online, and then you'd order it off that, you'd order it off, you'd send a check to the PO box, and then Rand would, run to the post office and mail you off a copy of it. But then, of course, people started making copies of the copies. So it wasn't within his control. And it wasn't until very often it's the pornographers that figure out how to monetize. When new technology breaks, it's amazing how often it's the porn world that figures out how to get rich off it. So they were really the one, this Seth Warshawski guy who was it was in Seattle, much like like you, Sean. He from his basement in Seattle, that's where the tape, that's where it really went worldwide.
Yeah, I read that he passed away about a year ago. During all this process, did you ever get a chance to interview or talk to Rand?
I didn't know he passed away. Is that true?
I'm talking about Seth did. Yeah. Seth
I didn't.
did. Yeah,
but
that's
I
what I
didn't know
read.
that. Oh, you read that?
Yeah.
Oh,
I read
shit.
that. Yeah, I think it was last year, end of last year. I think he passed.
That's the video guy.
Video guy, yeah.
But he would have been in his 40s, right?
I'm not sure how old he would. I don't know. I'll take a peek.
After this interview, I'm going to look that up. That's crazy.
Yeah.
No, Rand, where was Rand? Rand, after all this happened, he kind of disappeared from public view and got into marijuana growing in somewhere in Humboldt County. We had a really great interview that he had done. And that was one of our really best pieces of source material. It was a very long interview with Rand that we got our hands on. But no, we never spoke to him directly.
Yeah, I was just curious if he participated in this at all.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
He was so funny in the movie. I thought that his role was quite funny and entertaining.
Yeah, and you always have to obviously make some stuff up, but it was amazing how little, how much less we had to make up than normal. You always get to you take a little artistic license. If you see an opportunity for something funny, you might make.
Yeah.
In this case, like for example, his whole heist plan, where his plan was to pretend to be the dog. Tommy had this giant sheepdog, and Rand's big plan was to get like a fur yak rug, and he draped it over himself, and he kind of crawled on all fours in an effort to like elude the cameras. He disguised himself as Tommy's sheepdog, and completely true, not made up. I mean, that's like
wow.
I love the part too where you guys made him the anal guy, with the ex porn star wife. It's kind of funny too.
That was also I would have to check the Rolling Stone article. I'm pretty sure we didn't make that up. That doesn't sound like something we would.
Wow, that's funny. Wow.
Yeah, because he was a porn star, and he did anal. I'm pretty sure he did anal scenes. Check the Rolling Stone article. I don't want to. Again,
yeah.
I'm a little rusty on some of this, so I'm afraid I don't want to say anything wrong.
Speaking of the Rolling Stone article, and I think I went online and just to see what some of the chatter is happening on Reddit and all these other places, and a lot of people wanted to know, like how do you do a film on these people, celebrities, without their permission? I guess, like how does people are very curious about that and how that works. We come up against that all the time, but how does that work to someone who doesn't know?
I mean, the simple answer is that if public figures are you can write about public figures. You can't malign them. There are laws protecting them from, misrepresentation, but you're entitled to do a movie about any, famous person you want, be it Bob Marley, Freddie Mercury, or, sometimes they're done with the permission of the people. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes you get a more truthful end result by not involving the people, because often it turns out, I don't know. Sometimes if I hear there's a biopic and it's got the full participation of that person's family, if say they're deceased, I'm generally I'm wary that it's going to be kind of sanitized. But yeah, you're entitled to, you know, create art out of the lives of public figures. That's
I wanted to bring up real fast too, when we were, on the subject of copyright and that sort of thing. If you guys don't mind sharing, how did the two of you meet?
oh, well, that's a funny story.
Oh, who shot me
Jen and I?
and Rob?
Yeah, you
Oh,
and Rob,
I
Jen
was
and
like,
Rob, how'd you meet?
Jen should
oh,
probably
good
take this one.
question.
We were co-litigants in a landmark lawsuit that pretty much everyone in the world is impacted by.
Yeah,
Jen,
Rob and I,
do you want me to?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I know Rob and I know a little bit about copyright. We were plaintiffs in a class action lawsuit challenging Warner Chappell's copyright claim to the Happy Birthday song. And so we pursued that and we won. We
You were the
liberated the
lead.
Happy Birthday song. I
Yeah.
was the lead plaintiff, and Rob, but without Rob, he was part of the class and also a plaintiff. And since it's a class action, you need, multiple people that are aligned so that you can, qualify as a class action. And we challenged Warner, and we ultimately won and liberated the Happy Birthday song into public domain. So anybody
Yes.
can use it. You can use the song in your film, Rob. Anybody
Yeah.
can use Happy Birthday for free. It's in the public domain. In fact, I've seen so many Happy Birthday scenes and songs now since we won in 2015. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's so fun.
I owe you. I owe you something.
What do you mean? We're doing this together.
I made a movie. Many years ago, an indie film, and we used the song "Happy Birthday." There was a scene where somebody was just singing "Happy Birthday" and carrying a cake, and I had to pay something like $7,000 to the estate of Mildred, or their names. That's whoever supposedly wrote "Happy Birthday," and I was really pissed about it and surprised. I remember when
I'm pissed right now for you.
the music
7,000?
I think it was
Well,
$7,000.
Yeah, so Warner Chappell owned the licensing house that owned that song. So it was part of they were Mildred Hill, they were dead. Like they were long dead. They had no heirs, and this company owned the copyright to the song. So filmmakers like Rob had to pay $7,000 out of your own pocket.
I think I got like
pay for the song.
the discount. That's the low end, but I think a bigger film would have paid substantially more than that. But they've
hundreds of
raked
thousands of
in.
dollars. Yeah.
They've Warner Chappell had collected millions and millions over the years
Yeah.
for people singing "Happy Birthday," which to me is like, I mean, it is a song, but it just felt wrong. It felt like it belongs to everyone, and then as they dug into it, they found, well, the song, I don't know. I think of it as like a nursery rhyme, like having to pay for, Mary Had a Little Lamb or something. And the song over the years, and it wasn't even like they could prove that it was written. There wasn't a day when somebody just sat down and wrote the song. It really evolved from a melody, from another song. And the case dug into all that stuff. So when I read a New York Times article that there was a woman suing over "Happy Birthday," and her name was Jen
That was
Nelson.
me.
And I was like, wait a minute, that's and I thought about it not even that long ago, how annoyed I was that I had to pay that money. So I called the law firm that was mentioned in the article. And they immediately put me through to like the top partner. And there I was like kind of swept along on this amazing multi-year journey to liberate Happy Birthday from the clutches of these, these music licensing people who were charging for it. So now it's free.
Now it's
That's
free.
so bananas to me. $7,000 for
Yeah,
Happy
you're hung up
Birthday
on
in
that.
a movie. Yeah,
It was a little
I just
indie
want the
movie.
people
There was
watching this to know, like, that's the kind of stuff that goes on in this business, and
We'll have to do a whole other podcast on that story because it's a really, really
so
wild
much
story.
money.
And
if
we're
you're
just
making a movie, my
yeah,
movie was
so
like
we're
200,000 total. So that's like
yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
big show.
$200,000 movie. You need every penny. So like to get this
Wow.
Yeah.
$7,000 bill just because somebody sang Happy Birthday really pissed me off. So I
It's
was
great. It
really
pissed I know. That's yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But this is the kind of stuff, the behind the scenes stuff that, when you watch a film or watch a movie, you don't understand, some of these things that are happening in the back room or, the
yeah.
creative choice to not use a happy birthday, because you have to pay. Like that was inhibiting creative scenes and in movies and stuff. And now that you can use it, you can incorporate it. And I've seen so many movies and shows that include happy birthday. Now it's amazing that the song is everywhere now
Mhm.
because you can use it without having to pay. But
I
but it
feel like it
does teach
belongs to
you,
everyone.
yeah, and that's why I was like, well, this we're a little familiar with copyright law, and I thought that was a big question online, like how can you do a story about these guys if they're not involved, and clearly there
Most
are
of the
rules for that,
time, I know
and
often, if not most of the time, the people are not involved. It
yeah,
gets
and
it can get complicated when the people are involved. You can get closer to the truth sometimes if you do take creative license, and it's harder to take creative license if like you have a person kind of hovering over you telling you that's not how it happened. You know what I mean? Um,
yeah, I think that's a really good point. You need the space because everything you're doing is fact based, like you're looking at all the material out there and raw footage of interviews and what have you, and so you're staying in the lane, but also not being inhibited by someone's agenda,
uh,
you know
I mean, the
or
goal
something.
with anytime you're dealing with a real life person, you want to kind of get at the core emotional truth of the situation, you know? And sometimes it's actually easier to do that on, without the person kind of around. Um, but that's really, you're never gonna, it just would, I mean, frankly, it would be a boring movie if
Yeah.
you know, couldn't,
Yeah.
and you do have to invent things because you weren't there.
Yeah.
You don't know what actual words were said between the two people. It's all kind of speculative, but you kind of, the more you do it, you just get a feel for like, this feels, this feels truthful. You never know if it actually is. And it can't actually be because, said you weren't there. You don't know what they said.
Like the
What?
like the like the scene when Tommy's talking to his dick. That's truthful.
Exactly. Well, that is, well, the
Uh,
talking penis that you bring up, that is truthful in that it was in, that was, I cannot take credit for that. I have to give Tommy full credit because that was from his autobiography.
oh,
Um,
right.
yeah, if you read, Tommy Lee's, if you haven't read Tommy Lee's autobiography, I highly recommend it. But, in it, he has the part where he's talking about when he first met Pam. There's a long section where he has this conversation with his penis. It's like a back and forth. It's presented as back and forth dialogue between him and his beloved member, and how they both felt about Pam and what this meant for his future. He was so smitten with her that he was kind of staring down a life of monogamy suddenly. And for Tommy, that's pretty heavy. So he wanted to talk it. He wanted to talk it through with the individual who would be the most affected by that, which would be his penis, of course. So but even that, it's that's an example of something that is obviously ridiculous. but it's sort of
No,
true.
but his penis clearly needed to be a character in the movie
It's
because it is a character. I feel like,
it,
more people have talked about his penis than, any
when the sex
is
tape came out, yeah, they talked about probably. I would say that his penis was really the breakout star of the tape. It was probably like when I look back on it, I remember that's what I remember people talking about more than talking about Tommy, more than talking about Pam. They talked about his penis. Deserved a place of prominence in the show.
For like you said, though, for a rock star, for a drummer, there's worse things to be. Unfortunately for him, it took away his notoriety as a drummer because he is a good drummer.
Drummer.
Yeah.
I don't want to say it. I don't think he minded. I don't know.
Yeah.
Of course
I mean,
he
I don't know
didn't
what guy
mind.
would.
He'd be.
But that's what makes it even worse about the whole Pam side of the story because she was, like you said, she was slut shamed. Like she was looked down on. She was judged, and it was just
Yeah.
like I remember that so well, and it just never felt right. It was just like, why is y- we're having two totally different reactions to this same story. Like this is crazy. So
Yeah, and that I don't think it helped her career.
No.
She really wanted to. She at the time she was doing Baywatch, and I think she saw Baywatch as a stepping stone to kind of doing more serious roles, being taken more seriously. I don't know that she was ever going to be like the next Meryl Streep, but she definitely wanted to be taken seriously as an artist, and really, it's taken her. I think the place she wanted to eventually get to, she's just getting to now, which is amazing to see because she's really starring in really interesting projects, um, and getting the kind of roles that she I think would have loved to have gotten back then.
hmm.
I don't know if it's Sharon Stone or there were at the time in the 90s, female bombshells who also kind of pivoted into. Sharon Stone comes to mind, or maybe Demi Moore, who like kind of started as sort of quote unquote sex objects, but were able to really carve out really
Transcend,
interesting
yeah.
careers and in some case Oscar nominations and all that. And I think that's probably what she would have liked to have done, but really never got the chance because of the tape. Whereas for Tommy, I mean, it's easier when you're a rock star than, an actor, but for him it had no impact on his career. If anything, it helped his career. No Motley Crue fan was troubled by,
No.
you know,
No.
They're like,
No.
I'm gonna smash this record now.
stopped listening to Motley Crue
No.
because of a sex tape. Tommy really was a creature. He was in '90s. Sorry, he was in '80s. Like his peak of fame was in the '80s.
Yeah.
Pam, when the tape came out, was at the peak of her fame, but Tommy was really like kind of 10 years, give or take, from like the peak of Motley Crue and hair metal. And, that was mid late
Yeah.
'80s. And by the
Yeah.
time the tape came out, Motley Crue was definitely on the decline. Like their last album before this did not sell very well. I mean, it was actually well past that. They had that run of Theater of Pain, Girls, Girls,
Yeah.
Girls, Shout at the Devil. Those were like the three big
Yeah.
Motley Crue albums. Those were all like from, I don't know, 84 to 87 or something. So this tape was 95, something like that. So it in some ways kind of reinvigorated his career and brought him back into the spotlight. He had this show. Speaking of Cribs, he had this show called Tommy. What was it? Tommy Goes to Camp or something. He was like they did this reality show where he was like a drummer for a college
I
marching
remember
band.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I want to say
Yeah.
Nebraska maybe. Like it was around when Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie had the simple was it the Simple Life?
Yeah. Simple
Where
Life.
right, where they became farmers. So he got a show. I mean, he got a show out of this tape, and suddenly like his fame really, he was kind of out of the public eye, not out of the public eye, but like people weren't really talking about Tommy Lee in the early 90s. And then he suddenly was like, suddenly really back in the spotlight in a way that I think probably, I don't know that he was unhappy about it. Yeah, um, again, so it was, if anything, good for him, and certainly not the same thing for her.
I'm so curious about writing a script for TV. How does that work? Like, are you the lead writer? You have a writer's room, or how do you put these stories together?
Typically, in the case of really a limited series or an ongoing series, there's usually you start with one writer, and that writer is hired it's usually the person that's becomes what's called the creator. When you're watching a show and in the credits it says created by, that's usually the person who writes the pilot. So you're hired to write the first episode. And that's the hardest thing to do because you're building the whole world, you're building the tone, you're creating the characters, you're really setting the voice and the tone for the whole thing. That's something you do as a solitary thing. And then if you're successful at that, they might choose to start a writer's room. It can go different ways. The way it works now more and more is you write a pilot, and then you might write a second episode, and then you might shoot the pilot. And then if the pilot tests well, like you actually would cast it and shoot it and make the first episode. And then if it tests well, you would then open a writer's room and then hire writers and then write the rest of the season. In the case of this, they ordered it what's called straight to series because it's based on a true story. There was less guesswork. If you're creating a show that's fictional, pure fiction, not based on anything, like whether it's Ted Lasso or Succession or Mad Men, where it's just this could go anywhere, Breaking Bad, those you're usually they kind of want to know exactly where this is going because it can go so many different ways. If you're telling the story of this sex tape, for example, or if you're telling the story of, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer, whatever it may be, true, based on real people and real events. You roughly know where it's going. You can't veer that far off. You start with these sort of guardrails built in, the guardrails being the truth, and you can play with the truth a little, but you pretty much know what Jeffrey Dahmer is going to do in a Jeffrey Dahmer limited series. So that they usually will order, often they'll order that like straight to series without like knowing exactly where it goes. But typically there's like a pilot episode, maybe a show Bible with a rough outline of episodes, and then they green light it hopefully to shoot the pilot and so on. Right now, and I should also say things are pretty different than they were 5 years ago. When I made Pam and Tommy was made, that was I don't know how inside baseball you guys get on like the
love
the
it.
biz
I
and
love this. Yeah, it's
but like
fascinating.
5 years ago was the term peak TV, right?
Hmm.
5 years ago was kind of the peak of peak TV. That was when everyone was trying to outspend Netflix and out content Netflix. They could not greenlight shows fast enough. I forget the exact number, but it was something like 900 original scripted shows per year.
Whoa.
I'm of an age where like I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and there were like, 3 TV channels. And I mean, I could name all the television shows that existed back then. It was like Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Three's Company, Mork and Mindy, Happy Days. You know, this is like, you know, what you had to watch in primetime viewing on in 1978. And then, of course, cable comes along, and suddenly it goes from there being 8 shows on the air to maybe 50 or 60. And then it just snowballs over the decades to where we reached kind of the zenith of that maybe 5 years ago, where, once Netflix came along, everybody was terrified that Netflix was going to kind of just the power and the size of their library of content, everyone was in a panic, and they said, we need to create a whole streaming platform. And that's when you suddenly saw, like, it felt like once a month there was a new platform launching, Hulu and Peacock and Paramount Plus and Apple TV and HBO and Amazon. It was crazy. And every single one of those, their mandate was to keep up with Netflix. So they had these like crazy unlimited budgets that existed outside of financial sanity. So everybody was just they were spending more than they could justify. In normal times, you like look at the numbers and you say, okay, well, this show is going to cost X number of dollars. It's going to have X number of viewers, which will result in X number of advertising dollar revenue. Does this make sense? Like, does it make sense to make this $5 million show to generate, does the revenue justify it? That all kind of went out the window for a few years. It was a bubble, no different from really the housing bubble or, any tech bubble. So everyone kind of had the green light to just spend beyond what was like rational or reasonable. And then about 2 years ago, after the strikes and then after the pandemic, there was this collective return to fiscal sanity, which I think came from shareholders, like at Viacom and HBO and Comcast. They all were like, okay, we're losing hundreds of millions of dollars chasing Netflix. Like, stop. It's enough. You need to go back to making an appropriate number of television shows for an appropriate dollar amount that makes sense based on how many viewers we actually have. They were no longer going to make a $10 million show that was going to draw 100,000 viewers. It's just, which was what they were doing.
Yes.
It was crazy. So, but it was great. It was great for writers, and it was great for viewers, because you had shows outside of that bubble we were in, like that really crazy frothy period. You had shows that like wouldn't have gotten made, Points of View. It was wonderful for viewers. I mean, take a show like Atlanta, like some really beloved, critically acclaimed shows, they would have said, like a show like Atlanta wouldn't have gotten made before or after this bubble. They would have said, oh, it's too niche, it's too weird. The weird shit was a lot easier to make 5 years ago. And that could be something like Severance is a weird show. Or something like Shogun. I don't know, the limited series Shogun, which is like,
Oh yeah, that was
incredible.
brilliant. I love that. Yeah, that was
But
a great film.
that was FX making $100 million show. I'm making up that number, but it was something like that. $100 million show. It's medieval Japan, subtitled. Like,
Yeah.
that absolutely would not get greenlit today. And FX is known as they're very risk friendly, on the spectrum of risk averse to risk friendly. FX really is awesome historically. Like, they will take chances on things, but even FX, I think, wouldn't have made Shogun today. Just as I think Apple, well, I don't know. I don't know that we got them greenlit. Now that it's a hit, they're happy to renew it, but would they have made Succession?
It's an interesting discussion for sure, because if you're in this business long enough, you can see how these trends, like things exploding and then contracting and then expanding again, and how that affects all of our jobs, because we work project to project, and it's interesting.
There's like multiple pendulums swinging back and forth at all times. The pendulum of, we want content, we want stuff that's going to be prestigious and win Emmys. And now it's swinging back to, we want shit that that's cheap and easy and kind of brainless. Like shows that are, like shows that are
Shit
just
that makes
like,
money.
well, that are set right now. If you have a show that can essentially be done on one set, you know, like the old, almost like Cheers, or, you know, where it's, oh, there's a show.
Yeah.
If you take out a pitch and you say, oh, it's a show set in a bar, and every episode takes place in a bar, like you're so much, you know, it's such a leg up over a show where you're like, well, it's a show about a touring band and they're, you know, traveling all over the place. That the way they calculate that, they're like, oh, we could just build a set. You know, it's called a standing
That's
set.
interesting.
A show that can just be shot on a soundstage and reuse the same, you know, like It's Always Sunny in
Yep.
Philadelphia is a show that was just at this bar, and they cranked out. I mean, they're still making it, you know, 200-300 episodes on this set versus
That's
you're gonna
crazy.
see
Yeah.
versus a limited series like Pam and Tommy would not get greenlit today because it's expensive, it's period. It also is a limited, like there's a move away from, for a few years they were chasing limiteds, and like there were a lot of limited series getting made, and now there are much fewer because economically it's not as worthwhile as an ongoing series, because you create this very expensive world and then you're done
Right.
in eight episodes. They'd rather, you know, spend that money and do 80 episodes. You know, it's like
That's a
Yeah.
it's
good point.
economically really inefficient. So there's like all
Yeah.
sorts of what you watch, like the shows that get made and just how they're made. There's so much more to it than just creative decisions. Like you just don't even know when you're watching
Yeah.
something why that show got made and why it is.
When you're on set and they do make a scene change,
Yeah.
are you the writer? Are you there all day? Like, how does that work? Like, do they have to call you in? Like, when they
I'm
make that
there.
change?
I'm there because I'm the showrunner. In the case of Pam and Tommy, I am there. The writers of the episodes typically are not there. So you might call the writer and be like, hey, could you do this rewrite? It might be the day before. Like, you know, you have a meeting sometime during the day while something's shooting, and a producer will be like, I got some bad news, that location, you know, it's just too expensive, or so and so wants to shoot it, you know, on this other day when we're already going to be at that location. Can you, you know, kind of shuffle some things around on the page to make it work? Usually, often the showrunner might do the rewriting, but the writer is often not on set. And that was something that was really fought for when the strike happened, this past strike. Increasingly, writers are not on set. In the old days, I don't know when the old days were, but like 10, 15, 20 years ago, you wrote an episode, you'd be on set, and then you would, there were benefits for everybody, because when you're on set, you can actually make changes on the fly, and it's very valuable to have the person who wrote the thing there. And that person also, by being on set, that's how showrunners kind of are created. When writers are on set, they learn so much that, you know, when you're in a writer's room, it's just a room with, you know, a big plate of sandwiches in the middle and a white dry erase board. You're never, it's so different than the experience of being on set with everybody running around with, you know, headphones and cameras and, you know, people fighting and actors, you know, just all this. It's such a, there's so much stuff that you can only learn by being there.
Yeah.
And writers, the WGA fought really hard for writers to, when you write an episode, you get to be on set. And they were pushing back against it because you know, it's expensive, and you have to fly the writer out sometimes. You have to put them up. It's just, it's a hassle. I don't remember where they actually landed on it, but that traditionally was how people learned how to manage a set and be a showrunner, was just seeing it. You learn by observing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's kind of that whole system has kind of withered over the years,
Yeah.
which is a shame.
What about selecting, like in a series like this, in a limited series like this, Pam and Tommy?
Yeah.
selecting the directors, because there's multiple directors, right, throughout the course of a series like this. And when do those directors come on set? Because are you shooting little bits of pieces on Monday for episode 1 and 5, and is that a different director that comes in? How do you hand that off? How does that all?
You shoot. Well, first you have a director who directs the pilot, and that director is very important because they're the one that's gonna set the tone. Like, they're gonna set the look for the whole thing, and they're gonna make more decisions about the look and everything, how it moves and how it feels and how it looks. And then the job of the next directors that follow, because you usually don't. Sometimes on a show, say there's 8 episodes, you might have the same director all the way through. And that's great because then it's guaranteed to remain consistent. But then there's other shows where you have somebody come in, sets the tone. Often that's a name director or kind of somebody you've heard of, a more famous director, sometimes from the world of film. Ryan Coogler who did Black Panther and Sinners, is doing a new X-Files show. So he'll probably, I would assume, direct the pilot, and then he's going to set the tone. But then you have these other people who are really excellent episodic directors. Sometimes they're kind of people they're less, name brand, but their job is to match the tone that was set in the pilot by the pilot director. And then you typically direct. It's usually in blocks. Like for Pam and Tommy, we had 4 directors who each directed 2 episodes, and you direct them in blocks. And it doesn't even have to be in order. It's not like you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It could be like Craig Gillespie, who was our pilot director, also directed the last episode, which is also kind of a common thing. You direct the last and the first and last. But then we might have somebody else come in and direct episodes 2 and 5. And then those are shot in blocks. Like the director directs. You'll have director A for we'll shoot 2 episodes back to back. They leave, you never see him again. And then a new director comes in, shoots 2 episodes, depending on just what makes sense for schedule. It's crazy. And it's
Is there
all
a
done out of
benefit to
order.
having so many directors on a scripted show?
Well, it's probably efficiency, because while somebody's directing, somebody else can be prepping. You could have, because when you're in the middle of the show, like let's say it's an 8 episode run, you start with your pilot director, but by the time you're in the middle, you've got the assembly line of it is much more efficient, because let's say you're in the middle of your shoot, you might have the person who directed your pilot is already in post-production and they're in the editing room while you're busy another director is busy shooting, and then a third director at that same time could be prepping to shoot their episode, which hasn't happened yet. So you could simultaneously be in pre-production, production, and post-production all at the same time if you have 3
Right.
directors doing it. Versus
That's the same for unscripted. Yeah. So that's the reason. Yeah, unscripted, it's common to have multiple directors or supervising producers on a show, just because of the budget and timeline is so tight.
And by the
it's
end,
it's
great. And by the end, you're watching a rough cut of the pilot. Toward the end of the shoot, you're already seeing the first episode rough cut. So it's and the editor is starting.
Your job as a showrunner, you are keeping all these directors. You're keeping that continuity. You're keeping that team. You're steering that ship, right?
Yeah, you're really in charge of everything. It's like your job to just have. I mean, you're running. You're managing the director and the actors, and you're dealing with the editing, and you're dealing with budget problems and rewrites. It's also part of your job to have an opinion on, you're surrounded by people who are spending all day thinking about, there's a whole costume department thinking about the costumes. And then there's set designers thinking about the sets. And there's a music person thinking about the music. and they're just all coming to you, asking you questions about these things that they've been like thinking deeply about, and you haven't given any thought to whatsoever, and you need to like have an opinion, and their job is to really care very deeply about the minutia of what they're doing. So while you're trying to deal with a budget problem, you might have a costume person be like, which tie, you know, and you probably don't care, and you can't make them. The part of the job is like management of people, and these are people who take great pride in their craft. And you can't say, just pick one, I don't give a shit. Like, you do have to have an opinion on that, and you want to make people feel like heard and appreciated. Of course, you do care which tie your character is wearing, but maybe in that moment you don't, or you have something much more important to worry about. But you can't be like, just fuck off, I don't care, whatever. Or which gun, because they want to, and everything has to get approved by you. Like, do you like the gun with the pearl handle grip, or do you like the gun? And again, maybe you don't care, and sometimes you do care, but you're like, I can't think about that right now. Like, your job is, you have to like very calmly, you know, make space for all these people, these really incredible craftsmen, and all the different things they do, and like have an opinion when they come to you. Because if you don't, like, if you say, not now, like if somebody came up to me with a wardrobe question and I said, not now, they just, they walk away. First, they walk away feeling shitty. And then they're like stuck. And then they're like, he was in a bad mood. Should I wait an hour? Like, all sorts of like ripple effects, like harmful inefficiencies kick in when you know what I mean? Or to set a tone. There are sets that you hear about that are just, there's this intense climate of fear where everyone's walking on eggshells because the person in charge is really moody and mercurial and kind of a dick, you know? And then a really good set is a set where people are like doing their best work and are not afraid to make mistakes, you know? I really pride myself on, like, I've only done it twice, but I just love the culture, the aspect of the job that is about culture building. Creating a set that is happy, where people like feel productive, where people feel heard. There's so many different ways a set can go in terms of like what kind of vibes. It's more pleasant to be on a happy set. Better work is done when you feel seen and heard and appreciated, and you're not scared to walk up to someone and ask, you're not afraid. I
I've
mean, there are
always
people.
said that, like, a happy crew is a happy film, and you can tell, like, the end result, you can tell is generally better when the crew is getting along, and that's the thing, you have all these different people, like, lots of people depending on the size and scope of your project, but, upwards of, 5 to 10 to 150 people or more come together on this project-based thing, and they have to get along and under a
Mhm.
time frame, and there's a lot of personalities and passionate people that care about the tie and the gun and whatever it is that you have to decide about, and it's a lot going on. Like, it's just a lot going on, and it's fun to hear from you on the
On a
scripted side what that means exactly, that show running title. Now we know what that means in the credits.
You're setting a tone, yeah, and you wanna make people feel seen and heard, and then, you build relationships. Once you have that positive experience with, say, the production designer or the wardrobe person, they wanna work with you again. And then next time it's even easier because you have a shorthand, That first time you're
Right.
establishing, you're, like, getting to know each other in this incredible pressure cooker situation, you know?
Yeah.
And then that can be hard
Is it
too.
in scripted, is it unusual to have the writer be the showrunner too? Is that an do those 2 roles normally go together in scripted or
Often often the creator, the person who writes the pilot becomes the creator, And then once you're the creator, often you're the showrunner. If you're inexperienced, as I was, they pair you. Often there's a co-showrunner. There's two showrunners, and they'll pair you with somebody more seasoned in
I
managing a
see.
set. And then sometimes there's a division of labor where, like, that person's job, I had that on both Pam and Tommy, and the show I did after that, Welcome to Chippendales. They paired me with somebody who whose job was to deal with, kind of protect me from certain things so that I could focus on the actors and the creative. And then they dealt with, so and so's plane, is stuck in New York and we have to move, whether it's a logistical, some,
Yeah.
they might be putting out fires because there's so many fires to put out. They might want to protect you from the fire so that you can focus on, you know, let's say an actor has a really big scene that day that they're nervous about, and they want to make sure that they want to make some adjustments to their lines. They have an idea of how to play it. And they really want to talk to you about all that. um it's hard. You have this, sometimes you'll have another showrunner who they know that's happening, so they'll just like not even tell you about the crisis. At the end of the day, you'll learn that something horrible is going on. In movies, they say it's a director's medium. So, in your relationship to the project is like, it's weird and it doesn't make sense. Most writers find that the movie process doesn't make sense. You write a movie that originates in your brain, and you hand it off to someone else who directs it, and eventually it becomes referred to as a Martin Scorsese film. I mean, on the poster it says a Steven Spielberg film. Steven Spielberg directed it, but he didn't write it. He didn't write E.T. You probably don't know who wrote E.T. It's Steven Spielberg's. So the writer is like kind of sort of not that, you know, what they do is kind of almost an afterthought. Whereas in TV, the writer is the guy you've heard of. If I said Breaking Bad and I
Vince.
said who's, you'd say Vince Gilligan. He is
Yeah.
the writer, creator. So he is the auteur of the thing. You probably don't know who directed Breaking Bad, or, The Sopranos was Matthew Weiner. You don't know I mean, Tim Van Patten directed a lot of episodes of Mad Men, but you probably don't know his name, but you certainly know Matthew. So that's a really great thing about TV is you get more credit, and you're above the directors. Like, you're telling the directors what to do. Like, there's actually a job in film. There is no job above director, but in TV there is. It's called showrunner, creator. So it feels more like theater. Like in theater, the famous person, Arthur Miller, Edward Albee, August Wilson, it's the writer. I couldn't name a single theater director. So, selfishly, I do definitely like that better. And you get more help, If you write a movie, no, there's nobody to help you. In TV, you have a writer's room. You have this whole, that's when I first switched to TV, because I did movies before TV. I couldn't believe, like, what's the catch here? I I get this title, created by, and I get a whole writing staff. Versus you write a movie, you don't even, it's not called created by, Rob Siegel. It's created by the director. That was a big shock to me. Was
That's
in my
interesting.
first, and the experience of writing is so different. Like, when you're writing a movie, if you get stuck, you kind of will write yourself into a corner. The process of, like, getting the thing unstuck and fixing it can be torture, and it could take weeks. And you're just banging your head against the wall, and you're taking walks, and you're just stuck in your head. And it's this, like, solitary torture. Whereas the first time I was in a writer's room, it was on Pam and Tommy. I remember, you know it when you write yourself into a corner. And instead of, like, staring down weeks of torture, it was like 15, 20 seconds of 8 people kind of sitting around a table, and then somebody says something, and then somebody else says something, and then you're picking each other up, you're helping each other out, and you get unstuck. Like 8 people can get unstuck in a matter of seconds, where one person who's stuck without anybody else to, bounce things off can be stuck for weeks,
Yeah.
or they may never solve the thing.
How does that writer's room work? Is there one person writing and you're all sitting around that table and everybody's just throwing out things and one person's typing, or how
Well,
does
you're
that work?
not. Well, there is a writer's assistant who is typing, who's keeping a record of it, but you're not writing the episode. You're not in a
Okay.
final draft document, literally writing the episode. A writer's room is primarily for breaking story, so it's a lot of it's a lot of more index cards and outlines in a writer's room, and you're just writing. Okay, it's just bullet pointed. This happens, then this happens, then this happens, and there's cards, different colors for different characters. You can track, but you're building the architecture of the thing. It's like the writing is the actual writing is kind of the last step, where it's almost like painting a house or putting wallpaper up. It's like really the dialogue is it's the final step. A lot of people think of like writing dialogue as the same as writing, but in fact, writing dialogue is like the last step of a 10-20 step process. I mean, the real writing is character building, which is a lot of conversation. That happens in a writer's room where you're like, what does this guy want? It's a lot of motivation and desire. What does he want? How does he think, he or she? And then it's the building out the story structure. But once you have that, you pick a writer from your team of writers, and you say, okay, you're gonna write episode 2, you write episode 3, you write episode 4. You assign, sometimes based on like who feels like the best fit, and then they write it, and then usually, often the showrunner will then do a lot of some showrunners have a heavy rewrite hand, and some are lighter. But you want to make sure part of your job as the creator slash showrunner is to make sure it all, much as like the directors have to make sure they match the pilot episode style. You want to make sure the characters all sound consistent. So sometimes there's adjusting for that you do. But yeah, writer's room is really about outlining and structure.
For somebody out there watching, an aspiring writer, how do they get themselves into a writer's room?
I mean, right now, established writers are trying to figure out how to get themselves in a writer's room. There's so
Yeah.
few. I don't mean to be bleak, but like I just hear so many stories of writers that are just like, when am I going to get my next job? They're that contraction I was talking about. There just
Yeah.
aren't a lot of, I mean, the traditional path was being a writer's assistant. On Pam and Tommy, we had a writer's assistant who was just so great in the room that we assigned her to co-write one of the episodes. So that's a way to get a break. But it's hard. I don't know. I'm lucky because I've always I went from writing movies to writing pilots, which, I was sort of in charge. I have not done the like work your way up that ladder.
Yeah.
I kind of worked my way up a different way, where you might start as a PA on set. Traditionally, you're a writer's assistant, but like now, honestly, it's a really tough time. I don't know how most writers are not working, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
It's
And then we
it's
also got threats of this pending new strike.
yeah. There's a new strike. There's the AI fear. There's the existential Netflix terror. There's the consolidation of all the studios, and we're going to lose another.
Three studio town.
Plus Amazon and Netflix and Apple. But yeah, the legacy studios, we'd be down to 3. So it's like, it's a tough climate right now. There's just all this fear and contraction, but every bear market and followed by a bull market, but this one seems less people aren't sure where that next, boom is going to be coming from, given the circumstances. It feels different. Maybe people thought the sky was falling on the movie industry when television came along. It hasn't been. People who've been working in the industry for a long time often say that this is the worst they've seen it. So yeah, I don't unfortunately I don't have like the usual advice for the kid just out of film school starting. I feel like the energy is moving back toward film a little bit away from television. Seems like there's more. For a while, TV seemed to be the place where the energy was. And I feel like now television is maybe starting to cool off and maybe movies are kind of where it's at. I keep reading that Gen Z loves to go to movies, which maybe they're the big hope, I mean, I think older people, it's home once, streaming came and you could watch a movie at home, nobody wanted to go out and go to the theater. But like, I keep reading these articles about how Gen Z, because they spend all day on their phones, they like the community. For them, it's like the idea of being in a theater and having this communal experience of watching a movie together is something they crave and is sort of a novelty for them.
It's just such an interesting thing. You can never totally crack the code because there's some new technology or a new streamer or a new merger and all these things definitely affect the creativity, and it's just this giant ecosystem that we're part of. And hopefully you just catch a ride and get to get on a good film and or a TV
Yeah.
show or
I mean,
whatever. It's
I mean,
interesting though, but
the one consistent since the dawn of time is people love stories. So I think
yeah.
that's probably the great hope that ultimately everybody is clinging to is there will always be a need for storytellers and stories. Of course, then they bring up AI and say the machines will write the stories, but even that, what are you gonna do? But yeah,
So what motivates you?
I mean, I'm definitely drawn toward characters that are outsiders, underdog, misunderstood in some way. I like human stories. I don't think I could ever write a sci-fi movie or a horror movie. Everything I've ever done is like set in the real world, which for me has always been the most interesting place is reality. I always like things that are, like I said earlier, are fun. I don't like things that are I think life is funny and sad, and I try to do things that have both of those always. I don't think I could ever do something that was sad without being funny, and I don't think I could ever do anything that was funny without being sad, a little bit sad. I just think that's just to me what life is both. And sometimes my favorite stuff is when they're kind of happening almost at the same time.
Like writers dealing with Hollywood right now. There's a premise for you, right? A struggling writer in the dawn or demise of Hollywood. There you go.
Somebody is working on that as we speak, I'm sure.
I bet. I have
I bet
no
there's a lot of
doubt.
those out there right
There's
now.
a lot of those right now.
Oh
Oh
my
my
God.
gosh. It's a weird time, and I'm glad, that it's interesting. On the hot sheet, we have various guests from, different shows and different jobs, and, across the board, everybody that we've talked to is really dealing with this tough time in the entertainment business right now, and navigating through it. And the business is challenging right now, so it's good to talk about and let viewers know too of like, hey, it's like this, there is a whole nother world behind the screen, and that's what we hope to kind of bring to light here on the
For
hot
sure.
sheet.
For sure.
I love learning your process too, because I come from non-scripted,
Hmm.
as you know, and so it's fun to take a peek around the corner in the scripted space. And we're all in this together in this kind of challenging time in nonfiction and fiction, but it's really fun to learn the process.
I've never done nonfiction, but it doesn't seem that different. You're telling a story. I mean, a good documentary tells
Yeah.
a story.
Yeah, I started in feature film development. I worked at MGM back in the day.
Ah,
Uh, I burned out on the script reading part of it, just the stack of scripts and the whole thing, and got into unscripted. And the unscripted thing is just there's so much less stress.
Oh,
Like when
really?
you were talking about just all the things all the fires you've got to put out on a daily basis. That's
Yeah,
my
yeah.
memory of scripted space. And in the unscripted space, yeah, you have that, but not at the same level, not the same intensity.
The thing you guys have to deal with that freaks me out is you hear once you finished, once you're ready to edit, there's always like, we have 15,000 hours of footage that we need to get down.
Yeah, yeah,
Because you have no limits,
yeah,
with digital cameras and all now,
yeah,
every documentary filmmaker I've ever met, there's a moment when they're like, I have 2,700 hours.
yeah,
I need to get down to 96 minutes.
yeah.
Which that part like kind of freaks me out.
Yeah, and I would imagine sometimes it's easier working with actors than real people because real people can be very difficult in a
Yeah,
way that an actor, I'm sure, is difficult too, but they're there to act, whereas some people in a documentary, you know, shut down and don't wanna share their conflict. They don't wanna show you, their worst day and all that kinda stuff, but that's
right.
exactly what we're there to film.
Or
So
this would be the best scene if this person would just cry right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, ask
On
them to
cue,
cry.
come on,
Yeah,
cry.
we're
Yeah.
allowed to we're allowed to ask them to cry.
What are you working on now? What's next for Rob?
I've got, you have to have a lot of irons in the fire right now, and I do. But my two main ones, I have a thing that I'm developing for Hulu that I think I can't talk about, but uh, just file that away. Hopefully, in the next few months, you'll hear it announced.
Oh,
Um,
cool. Well,
then
yay. That's
I have a
exciting.
film. Sometimes you can't talk about things, but it so happens like right now, the two things I have going. There's a film I'm writing for me to direct. Because I want to get back to that. I haven't done that in a long time. So yeah, film for me to direct and a TV show for me to probably showrun. And if one of those happens in the next 12 months, then I'm good.
Well, that's great that
Uh,
you're able to stay busy in this challenging time because, as you said, a lot of people are not working.
well, you can create.
So,
That's the nice thing about being a writer. I don't envy directors because you can generate your own materials, generate your own opportunities. Um, and that's what I've tried to do, certainly right now. But what else are you gonna
that's
do?
awesome.
Be an
Yeah.
accountant?
No, no, no. That's when
You
that's when you dust off the SAG card and you go back to work. It's like,
you could start a podcast,
yeah,
I actually have some stuff in the works that I'm writing on, which is fun. I've always wanted to venture into the writing space. And, I mean, there's a fair amount of writing in nonfiction, actually, weirdly, but you're writing hot sheets, of course. But you're writing outlines and you're writing character descriptions and notes for the edit. Like there's a lot of writing. So I've always felt like, why not give a crack at, writing some unscripted stuff as well.
That's great, awesome.
I know it's fun. I might have to call
Good
you
jam.
and ask for some tips or
Sure.
something because I'm just, but I do know stories, so there's that. It's just creating worlds, which would be new. I usually plug into worlds versus creating worlds.
I mean, there are definitely documentary filmmakers that make the leap that, have done really well.
I can understand that because you have to get in people's heads to be able to understand their point of view. So
Mhm.
what motivates them, what makes them tick, why they're making these decisions or whatnot. So you're role playing all the time in the documentary nonfiction space. So it's just kind of putting a name on it. It's just calling it something else, really. I
yeah. As I
think.
said, there's so much writing happening in our world that the WGA East is kind of forcing all of these unscripted companies to unionize.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that's happening right now. Yeah, the last company Jen and I worked for together, they were getting a lot of pressure in the press, I should say, to unionize.
Well, actually, some of the shows like 90 Day Fiance, I was in the Writers Guild on that show.
Oh,
Because
really?
there's so much writing. Yeah, because of 90 Day Fiance is a finite timeline. It's a ticking time clock structure.
Hmm.
Because I don't know if you know the story. The couples are international couples, and they have a.
I'm a big fan.
Oh,
I
you
haven't seen
are?
every.
Okay, well,
Oh yeah, yeah. Big
it's
Ed.
amazing. It's
Which
so
season
they
were
have
you?
oh, 7. I did 7, Robert and Annie. I did a lot of pickups in other seasons. So I've probably worked with, at least half a dozen couples, if not more. But my big couple was Annie and Robert. I was very involved with
What
them.
countries? I'm trying to remember it. Them.
She's from Dominican Republic, and
Yeah.
he's from New York but lived in Florida. And
Okay.
He met Annie on a boat on a cruise, and they were
Okay.
wasted.
I don't think I saw that
And
season, but I've seen lots
it's
of the.
really funny. They're so amazing. They're so funny.
I
But
love
because
that
you're on
show.
this ticking time clock, you have a finite number of days to get to the 90 days, and they have to decide if they're going to get married or not. So it's pretty structured, even though it's nonfiction, it's structured. The scenes are, once you kind of create what the scene is, then it's all real sort of within the scene. But,
Yeah.
you're leading towards this potential marriage or not marriage. So, there's a lot of pre-interviews and outlines and, kind of semi loosely scripted scene work to kind of build up to this timeline. So it's tons of fun, but we were in the guild for that. And that's kind of actually that show really kind of inspired me to think like, wait, you're writing the outline anyway. Like, why don't you just try this, these other
Yes. A
ideas? So
short leap. Exactly.
so
I didn't know
I,
you worked on.
I I'm gonna be calling you, Rob, because
All right. All right.
I love your work. I love
Thank you.
Pam and Tommy. We
Yeah, it's
kind of
great.
really, honestly, you really captured a moment in time. I don't know what was happening when they greenlit this show. If 90 nostalgia was like the hot trend at the time, or why they greenlit this
I think true crime
show.
was the hot trend. It's still a hot trend, but plus true crime plus celebrity would be Ryan Murphy has kind of made a whole career out of that. It's I would say that was the appeal.
So that was the appeal. That's interesting because it's such a 90s nostalgia. Like you guys really captured this moment in time,
Yeah,
where
well, I mean, I'm sure that was a part of it too. 90s nostalgia and celebrities and, literally sex and drugs and rock and roll.
sex
Um,
can't that will never go away. Anybody wants to do a story on sex, drugs, and rock and roll, whatever mergers are happening
that is
or
AI
whatever,
proof.
that will live.
Yeah.
And just add a talking penis, and there you go.
You're on your way to Emmy glory.
Well, speaking of Emmy glory, 10 Emmy nominations for Pam and Tommy. That's an extraordinary feat
That's
that comes from the top. It comes from you creating this world and making all the thousands of decisions that make this show come together, and getting the actors an amazing script to work with. Like, that's on you. So congratulations. Emmys. That's a lot. You guys
yeah,
swept it.
it's kind of crazy. It's
Damn, that is really cool. That is so cool. Well, we hope to talk to you again about your next
next
film
time I have
because
something to plug, I will
I would love that. I would love
hopefully
that
soon.
because now, yeah, the writer in Hollywood. The
We will keep an eye on the trades. Wait for that big announcement.
I mean, don't, you could start in 6 months, but
Okay.
there you go.
Okay. I'll
Just
get on my tracking board and figure out what one it is. How about that?
all right, all right. I don't think it's on there yet, but yeah.
And
Yeah.
we will, and please subscribe to the Hot Sheet. And viewers, look out for Rob's next screenplay and movie, and subscribe to the Hot Sheet. And we'll keep you informed. We'll keep you updated. We'll give you behind the scenes of what's happening, not just in the movies, but in this business, which is really, it's a really interesting time for us all.
Yeah, and they can go watch Pam and Tommy, and they can, if they don't have Hulu, they
Yeah.
can get Hulu on in the link in the description.
Yeah. Get Hulu. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Get Hulu.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob, for all your wonderful insight. I really appreciate it.
You got it. My pleasure. That was fun.
Appreciate it.
That was
Thank you.
super
Thank you
fun.
for your time, man. Thank you.
Bye.